Now that, as Stefan says, that he has frightened all of you with how complicated the law is in this area, and it is complicated, I wanted just to talk to you a little bit about Altria's compliance program and its political law compliance program specifically. For those of you not familiar with Altria, Altria is the parent company for Philip Morris USA, a cigar company called John Middleton, a smokeless tobacco company called U.S. Smokeless Tobacco that makes Skoal in Copenhagen, and St. Michel Wine Estates. I serve as their Assistant General Counsel, and about 85 to 90% of my day-to-day job responsibilities is overseeing the political law compliance program for Altria and its companies. So a word of warning before I get started. I'm going to give you an overview of that program, but I always caution it with what I call the Goldilocks rule. Is this works for us. We are very active in the government affairs arena, but you have to make sure from a corporate perspective that your own compliance program that you're looking at would work for your company. So you can't take Altria's program and replicate it in full because you may not have the same activities that we have. You may not be as regulated as we are. You may be more regulated than we are in some respects. So just a word of warning about that, and the slides are in your packet as well. Altria is known as having the Cadillac of political law compliance programs, and we do devote a lot of resources to it. There are not a lot of companies that have a full-time or almost full-time in-house counsel that deals with political law issues, and we've had our program for about a dozen years now, and it's a very stable program. That was not always the case, and we had some unfortunate incidences in the late 90s where we had a in-house lobbyist based in New York who was taking legislators and other state officials out to dinners. And so she would go to the fine dining establishments of New York City and take these folks out, and it would be her and the legislator. And on her expense report, she would say there were 6 people instead of the 2 people that were there. And New York at the time had a $75 gift limit. It came out that there was a complaint filed against us, and we looked into it ourselves. This was prior to my arrival at Altria. And the Commission on Lobbying there in New York determined that we had underreported gifts to the tune of about $350,000 over the course of several years. The lobbyist was barred from lobbying in that state for 3 years. We faced the highest fine. We were paid the highest fine ever in New York State history for a lobbying violation, and dragged a few folks in the state legislature and in Albany through the mud with us in that endeavor. The in-house lobbyist was doing similar activities in the state of Connecticut. We also paid a substantial fine there, and she became has a dubious distinction of being the first person ever barred from lobbying in the state of Connecticut. So this was the internal crisis that forced us to look at what we do from a government affairs perspective and say, what are we not doing? And what we were not doing was we didn't have someone like me in-house looking at these activities. We utilized outside counsel for political contributions and making sure we were within the limits, but everything else was not as stringently monitored from a legal perspective. So what we have now, and out of that crisis came what we have now, and over the past 6 years that I've been in Altria doing this, we've changed it a little bit. But like every company, we have a code of conduct. That code of conduct specifically calls out political activity and government affairs activity, and that does a couple things. Number one, that highlights at the highest corporate level that we possibly can that this is an issue that employees have to be mindful of and take seriously. It also allows me, from a legal perspective, to be able to point to something in my trainings and when I'm talking to people and say, look, this is something important. This is something that our chairman and our board of directors has determined is important to the company. And then the Altria group, the parent company, adopts principles based on that code of conduct. And one is the political activity principle. And through that flows the policies that I'll talk about in a little bit that each of the Altria companies adopt after that. But each of the principles, and there's 15 of them, is when we do our internal risk management process that every company has to do under the sentencing guidelines, every department within our company looks at those 15 principles and says, do I have any risk associated with these principles? And so that helps me, and we're a fairly, a small company in terms of employee base, and we have about 10,000 employees, about 5,000 of those are manufacturing, so I'm really dealing with 5,000 to 6,000 office employees that are primarily based in Richmond, Virginia, or in Washington, D.C. And so, but it allows me to get information that I might not normally get, that activities of departments that I might not be aware of, that they're engaging in government, engaging with government officials. An example would be we have a leaf department. We obviously buy tobacco leaf, and one of the interactions that we do is we have meetings for our tobacco growers in the South. And they oftentimes, they're a conference, we talk about growing and growing techniques, and we invite the local cooperative extension agent. Well, that person is always a university employee, a public university employee. And because we are a registered lobbyist in states, some states prohibit a registered lobbyist from giving any gift to any public employee. So we are able to, through the political activity principle, to find out that type of activity that might not be on top of mind for an employee. Under that principle, as I said, there are 4 policies. We have a lobbying policy, a gifts to government officials policy, a political contributions policy, and a charitable contributions policy when that contribution involves government officials or political activities. And those policies lay out the processes that must be gone through when someone wants to speak to a government official, when someone wants to give a political contribution, when someone wants to give a gift. And I'm not going to go in depth on those, but essentially everything flows through me, in addition to our government affairs department. So before a non-government affairs employee engages with a government official in what could be seen as a lobbying context, they need my approval. Before anyone gives a political contribution from the company, whether it's cash, whether it's in kind, they need my approval. And before anyone gives a gift to a government official, they need my approval. For the political contributions and gifts, if it's over $5,000, they not only need my approval, they need my General Counsel's approval. So with the idea that obviously the larger amount of contribution brings a little bit higher risk to the company.
Does that include board of directors as well?
These are all corporate contributions, not individual contributions. On our lobbying side, we have lobbyists in every state, both in-house lobbyists and consultant lobbyists. So if you add our federal and state lobbyists altogether, you're in the about 200-person range on the consultant side. So we obviously file a lot of lobbying reports. We file more than 450 lobbying reports a year disclosing our activities at the state and federal level. One of the things that we do is monitor our consultant lobbyist activities. And how we do that is before we engage in any consultant lobbyist, I do a background check on them. I call Rick and his colleagues when Rick was there at the ethics commissions or lobbying commissions and determine if they've had any complaints filed against them. I look on the public websites to see if there are any enforcement actions. And we make sure we do the due diligence from a legal perspective to make sure that we are not tying ourselves reputationally to somebody who may have some problems. Within the contract itself, we require all of our consultant lobbyists to register I don't care what the threshold is. The moment they have a new contract, they register for us. And within the contract, we require that they file their reports on time. We require that they provide us any lobbying information that we may need to file our reports. We have specific standards of conduct that we require of them that are in the contract as well. And we specifically prohibit any gifts or political contributions made on our behalf by those consultant lobbyists. And this helps us in the case of if there is an issue that arises, we have a contractual remedy for it. They violate a lobbying statute, they violate a gift law, we have a contractual remedy that we can terminate that engagement. And then finally, ongoing, I provide annual training to all of our lobbyist consultants every year. Just yesterday, I was doing a training for our federal lobbyist consultants in Washington. And then we require all of our consultants to give us a date-stamped copy of their lobbying report. So we know that they're filing their reports on time. And then on top of that, we have what we call the State Government Affairs Monthly Certification Form that you see on the screen here. And every month, our in-house lobbyists have to send this form in. It goes to me, it goes to their boss, it goes to our head of State Government Affairs, and it notes not only what reports were required to be filed by us, but it also notes what reports were required to be filed by our consultant lobbyist. And you see it's the date due, the date filed. And our lobbyist, our consultant lobbyist and our in-house lobbyist are very aware that when I get the report, I look at these closely, and if I see that the report was due on the 31st of January and they filed it on the 5th of February, that they're going to get a call from me, and they're going to have to explain. And we monitor that, and if it becomes a recurrent problem, we can then go to that contract provision and say, look, we're now terminating your contract because you're not abiding by the contract and filing your reports on time as we require. And what I always tell our consultants also in those annual trainings is we are tied to you for your work on behalf of us, and we're tied to you for your work on behalf of everybody else you represent. So you may think that you can be straight and clean with us and do everything that we think is appropriate and everything that's legally appropriate, but if you're out skirting the edge of the law for one of your other clients, that's going to come back and bite us as well. The headline is going to be, Lobbyist Jones, who represents Altria, who represents Philip Morris, is implicated in this ethical issue, even though we may not have anything to do with the ethical issue, maybe for another client. So we are very mindful that whatever happens with our lobbyist for us and for their other clients has, certainly reputational concerns in any event. We also engage in a lot of grassroots activity. This is a photo of a mailing that we did in Idaho last year when they were considering an excise tax increase. We communicate with adult tobacco consumers that are in our database, and we communicate with them by direct mail. We have a website. The top one is for tobacco retailers and wholesalers. The bottom one is for our adult tobacco consumers. And that's how we inform them of pending legislation, primarily on the excise tax front, that affects us. That obviously also requires a lot of compliance. So every time before we engage with our adult consumers on a legislative issue, when we're asking them to reach out to their elected officials to tell them how they feel about it, that again comes through me for a compliance check. And I prepare a written memo that goes out to our lobbyists and say, yes, you have to file an additional registration. No, you don't have to file an additional registration. And here are the activities that may or may not, that you may engage in that would be reportable. Here are the activities that would not be reportable. So you know that you can track them and report them in accordance with the law. We also provide political contributions, both through our Political Action Committee and corporate contributions where those are allowed. Since 2007, we have noted on our website the political contributions that are made by Altria and its companies, and we update those disclosures on an annual basis. We had a conversation and an engagement with a shareholder several years ago where they thought we could do more in this area, and so we expanded what we provided. We go on our website at altria.com. You can see this. Gives a little more information about the controls that we have in place for political contributions, and then provides the information on a state-by-state basis on what contributions we make. And that is, like I said, through our political action committees, our corporate contributions, any contributions to a ballot measure committee, and any in-kind contributions. And one of the things, we do not engage in independent expenditures, but one of the things that we note on our website, if we were to engage in independent expenditures, under our view, this would fall under our reporting obligations that we've imposed on ourselves. And this is all extra work, and it is not required by the law, but it is something that we have talked to our shareholders and understand that this is something that the public wants to know, and in our view of that this is an area of transparency that we can lend something to that issue. This is an issue that a lot of companies are facing. There are shareholders across the country that are filing shareholder resolutions on disclosure of political spending. They are increasing in number. In 2008, there were about 25 filed. We don't have the numbers for the 2012 proxy season that is now underway, but in 2011, there were 75 shareholder resolutions filed asking companies to disclose their political spending, their political contributions on their website. So this is something that, for those of you in corporations or affiliated with corporations who represent corporations, you may see. They're right now have been targeting the S&P 100. I think my understanding is this year they broadened it to look at the S&P 500 as well. So it is something that is constantly being talked about at the shareholder and corporate governance level. And I believe this was the number one issue for shareholders in the term, if you measure it in terms of how many resolutions were filed in 2011. It was either first or second on that it was the most popular type of shareholder resolution that was filed. I also, a big part of my job is training. You can't have a program unless the folks in your company know about it and know what their responsibilities are and the requirements of your policies. And so we do that in several ways. One of the ways that we do that is for every new employee, we have an online training that sensitizes them to this area. My primary concern is not our government affairs department. They know the law. They know when to check in with me. They know where the issues can arise. It's everybody else. And you've got to be able to look at those outside your government affairs department. And looking at government affairs department is very important, but you've got to look those outside your government affairs department to make sure that they are not tripping into anything. So this is an online module, web-based training that we've made. We developed it in-house, and it goes through, you see in number 2, it goes through a lobbying, it goes through a grassroots communication, charitable contributions, and just the importance of providing us information when we ask for it on lobbying-related issues. And that really sensitizes them to what the requirements are. We also do other types of engagement. I do a lot of live training for different departments. We also post things on our intranet. This was something that we posted late last year, just to remind folks that these policies are out there, that these are the requirements, and relate it to them in their day-to-day work activity. Because what I found both in private practice, I've been doing this for almost a dozen years now, and in both private practice and in my practice at Altria, a lot of sort of your day-to-day employees, when they think government official, they think an elected, they think a legislator. They don't think the public school teacher. They don't think the bureaucrat that they may be interacting with. So when you say don't give a gift to a government official, they're like, well, I don't ever see. I never go down to the Gold Dome. I never see a legislator, but they may be talking to that county extension agent. So you have to make sure that you highlight these issues. And then one of the things that I always do, again, to make it real for our folks, is show them what I say is the cops are on the beat. This is an issue that the commissions across the country at the federal and state level are looking at, and certainly some of these regulators are more active than others, but it is something that is out there. So what I typically do when I do my live in-person trainings for folks is I have a picture of a sinking ship, and with a quote, sometimes the purpose of a person's life may be only to serve as a warning to others, and show them the ethical travails of folks other than themselves. So looking at the commission's websites, pulling out enforcement actions, showing them how these things come to life. I mean, just yesterday in Massachusetts, the Department of Justice is asking a judge to impose a $200,000 fine and a 6-month period of imprisonment against a gentleman who was reimbursing his friends and colleagues for making political contributions in the state. He made about $64,000 in political contributions over the course of a number of years. He was a big-time developer in the state, and he was reimbursing these folks for their contributions in what we call a straw donor scheme. So it's not only the commissions, it's also the Department of Justice, and the FBI has a task force on public corruption. A lot of folks across the country have gotten ensnared in that, and it is one of the top 10 priorities of the FBI is public corruption. What you see on your screen is something that I've also used in a training. There, a couple years ago, with the thought that the federal House and Senate ethics committees weren't enforcing the rules as they should and weren't being as aggressive as they should, since it's a self-regulating type of institution, there was created the Office of Congressional Ethics. And so what they did was, in response to the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform Bill, the Office of Congressional Ethics received a complaint that there were members of Congress engaged in fundraising within the Wall Street sector at or around the time that they were voting on Dodd-Frank, on the Wall Street Reform Bill. And so they brought, I think it was about 7 or 8 congressmen into the loop, sent out requests for information not only to them, but to lobbyists across the D.C. and to fundraisers. We did not receive any inquiry, but as I was looking through that report that came out last January, they had all the attachments of the documents they had received, and I came across this email from one of our federal government affairs assistants who was simply just RSVPing for a fundraiser that our PAC was going to contribute to, one of our federal lobbyists was going to attend. And that went out and went to the Office of Congressional Ethics. And you can see it, or if you can't read it in the back, it says, I'd just like to RSVP to attend the fundraiser. Nothing improper about it at all. But my point is, and was when I show this, is that, if it had said something, if it had, again, talked about legislative action, we're happy for the congressman's support of this bill, and so we're happy to attend the fundraiser. Something that might be meant innocuously, but in the context of a written document looks entirely different. and would drag a company into the throes of this investigation and hire folks like Stefan to help them guide themselves through a Office of Congressional Ethics investigation.
Not that that's a bad thing.
The investigation is, the hiring is not. And so, what I always say is, emails have a very long half-life. You never know where they can go. And, even if you don't mean it in a way that is improper, it can certainly be taken that way. So we always caution folks to think about what they write, and especially in the age of BlackBerries, it's very easy to not think about what you write and fire off something very quickly. But I guarantee you that there is a vault down in Nevada somewhere under the mountains that the Department of Justice has that keeps all of our emails, and they will all come back to kill us all in the past at some point in time. The final thing that I'll show you on the training piece is we have what I think is a fairly innovative training module for what we call our field sales force. These are the folks that go out to the 7-Elevens, that go out to the Walgreens and make sure that the retailers are stocking our product appropriately, that they are aware of the promotions that we're providing and the like. And these are entry-level positions. These are millennials. They're 20 to 28-year-old folks straight out of college. And one of the things that is a challenge for any training program is making sure that you relate it to your audience. And these are the folks that I think, as Governor Dean was mentioning, that are watching Colbert, that are watching Jon Stewart, that get their news in an entirely different way than a lot of other folks. And so we have a training program directly aimed at them that includes some education on grassroots lobbying. The other thing about these individuals is they're on the road. They're working out. They have a territory. They're working out of their car. They don't really have a physical office. So we had to create a program that speaks to them in their language, that isn't overly long, because they're not going to sit at home one night and watch a 45-minute web-based presentation on lobbying. So this is a very short clip. It's about a 3.5-minute video that we've rolled out to our field sales force. Very well received. And it talks about the interactions that they have with retailers. And you saw earlier our grassroots materials. So we regularly communicate with retailers, and sometimes they proactively reach out to us and say, I heard there's a tax bill, I heard there's this issue going on in my locality, what can I do? And so this training video is to show them, to the field sales force, the issues that can arise and how they should react to it.
TSN with Cheap Cuts Tobacco. Oh boy. And it's your Kenny. Good afternoon. My name is Tony DeFalco. I am a territory sales manager for Cheap Cuts Tobacco.
Hey, honey, just recording your outgoing voicemail?
No. Robocall.
What?
I got one of those automated calling systems that you use to call zillions of people during political campaigns, and I was interested in messaging about the latest legislation to increase tobacco excise taxes. So you need to call all 9 accounts.
Was this a request from your colleagues in the company government affairs department? Of course not. Honey,
Don't worry, I'm sending it to my boss too. Maybe you should just call it 1 a.m. or 4 a.m.
Tony, you're not supposed to be lobbying public officials or asking your customers to lobby, unless government affairs asks you to do it.
No. I'm not lobbying. I'm just trying to influence legislation on behalf of a company.
Definition of lobbying. Register for one.
Well, I don't know. Besides, I'm not sending this to any politicians.
Okay, so you're not involved in direct lobbying, but you are enlisting the help of the community to influence politicians, which is indirect lobbying.
Indirect? That makes it sound so innocent and
The rules for grassroots organizing are complicated, and depending on the city or state, you or your company might have to register or file reports.
grassroots. This is tobacco, sweetie, not lawn care.
You don't know what grassroots means, do you?
Maybe I should ask your buddy Webster.
Yikes. And following the company's policy. Not true for folks here at AGBC. The past few years have seen a large amount of legislative and regulatory activity affecting our customers who sell tobacco products. Because these government actions can have a significant effect on their businesses, our customers may want to know the company's position on an issue. That's usually okay as long as you know the company's position and represent it accurately. However, sometimes a customer may ask you how they can make their voice heard on a specific public policy issue, or how they can otherwise get involved in the company's lobbying efforts. In these situations, be careful in how you respond, as your conversation could evolve into grassroots lobbying. Lobbying includes communicating with the state, local, or federal government officials in an attempt to influence government, legislative, or regulatory policies or actions. Lobbying also includes asking or encouraging third parties like retailers or wholesalers to contact government officials on public policy issues. Asking others to contact their elected officials is called grassroots lobbying. When employees engage in either direct or grassroots lobbying, the company or its employees may be required to register as lobbyists. Before you engage in direct lobbying or grassroots lobbying, you should seek guidance from the government affairs and your lawsuit. So if customers ask about legislative issues that are outside your expertise or your comfort zone, don't just make something up. Tell them you'll get back to them, not via robocall, or direct them to Altria's tobaccoissues.com website. Then seek guidance from government affairs or your lawsuit. Failing everything else, think about the implications before you engage in actions that can be seen as direct or grassroots lobbying. And always check in with us if you are unsure. Remember, do your due diligence when it comes to
So that's a short training video, like I said, that we used. We partnered with Second City, the Chicago improv troupe, to do that, to get to the Jon Stewart, Stephen Colbert type of humor and dialogue. The last thing that I will say is, for those of you looking at your company's political activities and trying to figure out what to do with regard to them, this is an area that is going to stay in the news. I think not only did the world turn topsy-turvy for candidates and political parties with Citizens United, it did it for companies too, and shown both a media spotlight and just a public interest into what companies are doing, not only with independent expenditures, but all of their political activities. Stefan was involved in a group on the conference board, and I had the pleasure of speaking at a conference seminar they did last year. There's a couple copies out here. I would urge you, if you're interested, to look at this handbook on corporate political activity. It is a very well thought out book that talks about the issues that companies need to consider when they're engaging in corporate political activity. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Stefan.
Great.